All right, Mr. Knopper, we all set to go?
Yep, 7:15.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knopper. Appreciate that. So we're going to call to order the regular council meeting here on Monday, March 7th at 7:15 p.m. We host it via Zoom webinar, as well as stream live on Facebook at Town of St. Andrews Facebook page. If anyone has a question this evening, you can submit it as well by emailing Mr. Knopper, so Paul Knopper at pknopper@townofstanders.ca, and Mr. Knopper will make sure to have those in the comments. I note, first of all, that all members of council are in attendance, so we'll jump right into welcome and recognizing that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Pescatawagati people, which is part of Quanus-Kumcook, comprised in part of St. Andrews, where we stand today in New Brunswick. It's under the umbrella of the unceded traditional territory of the Wolastoqey and the Mi'kmaq people. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Look for a mover to approve the agenda as circulated tonight. Okay, I've got Councillor Hurdle and seconded by Councillor Blanchard. I just want to note that we will be going to closed session at the end of the meeting. In addition to the reasons stated, I just wanted to, for the record, say that we'll be going in as well for an issue regarding to Section 68J, which is a labor and employment matter, including the negotiation and collective agreements. So,
Your Worship, I'll just make a quick amendment to the agenda. That's first.
Thank you, Councillor Blanchard. Go ahead.
Nothing major, just that Councillor Neal and Councillor and myself are actually switched. Our portfolios are switched on the agenda, and I'm listed as I wouldn't want to take away Councillor Neal's thunder on the motion around the fire truck, so just wanted to make that change.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. I think staff got together and wanted to specifically take that away from Councillor Neal. I guess we'll figure that one out after, right? So I appreciate that catch though in the actual agenda. Thank you for that, Councillor Blanchard. Any changes though outside of that? Okay, call the question. All those in favor of this agenda, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. The agenda has been approved. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there any this evening? I've got Councillor Hurdle.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Again, regarding PED 220203 as it relates to short-term rentals, I will be sitting that one out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we'll look for you at that time. Any other member of council? Okay, I'm just going to quickly recuse myself when we get into the grants, just on the one regarding in regards to the home and school, as my wife is the president of the Home and School Association. Although there's no financial gain, just the optics behind it, I'll set that one out. So presentations, we do have Hollis Bartlett joining us this evening. So first of all, I see him. Thank you for joining us, Hollis. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity to meet Hollis, he is with the Regional Service Commission, and he was kind enough to actually do a presentation on local governance reform. So we're all familiar that some of the responsibilities are changing around that, and Hollis was certainly nice enough to again join us and take us through a presentation. So Hollis, the floor is yours. Thanks again for being here. Oh, we've got a little bit of a sound issue right now, Hollis. So we can't hear you. It doesn't say mute it, but there's no audio right now.
How's that? Is that better?
There you are. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Anderson, and thank you everybody for having me. I know you've all been going through local governance reform stuff with the town of St. Andrews. So we thought we'd take this opportunity just to have a little brief, I guess, presentation. And if you have questions or discussion about local governance reform and how it affects your regional service commission and what the impact might be on the town of St. Andrews. So if it's okay with staff, can I share my screen? Is that all right?
Share screen's ready and available for you.
There. I'm just going to make myself a little bigger here. There we go. So, SNBSC, Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission, and what local governance reform is going to mean for us and how it relates to St. Andrews. So the mandate, first of all, of RSCs is expanding. Our current mandated service are solid waste and land use planning. That's elective for municipalities such as yours. New mandated service are going to include economic development, tourism promotion, community development, regional transportation, regional infrastructure, or recreation infrastructure cost sharing. On top of that, we're going to be forming a new public safety committee. That's a part of the new legislation. And also we are going to be developing a regional strategy, and service standards are going to be created for all of the various services that we offer. In land use planning is going to be strengthened with new legislation. That would include provincial statements of public interest. Those are going to be introduced around the province. A new process for making or amending land use plans, and that'll be in coming regulation. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet. And minimum standards for planning services. And what that means is in order to have you, if you're a municipality and you're getting planning services, it has to come from a professional planner, an MCIP registered planner, such as our staff here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the new mandated services. So first one being regional economic development. So we will be providing regional economic development as a service throughout the region. And we are currently looking at different options to deliver this service. It could include partnering with a couple of existing agencies that are in the region. We could do it 100% in-house, or maybe a combination of both of them. And we've been exploring some options, but there's nothing firm yet on how we are going to deliver this service. The activities are going to include identifying economic activity sectors for growth, creating investment-ready communities, and that goes hand in hand with our planning service, workforce development strategies, and newcomer retention. Another mandated service that we will have is tourism promotion. So that'd be promotion of the region as a product. It's not intended to replace local tourism promotion. So we have, I think this corner of the province has some of the best offerings that we, for tourism, and it's underrated and it's underused. So, we're hoping to take good advantage of that. So we can do this in-house, and we already have capacity for that. Community development is another one of our new mandated services. What this is going to mean for us is we're going to be absorbing Vibrant Community Charlotte County into the Regional Service Commission and continuing and expanding that mandate. We will be using our in-house resources for some of the administration and stuff like that. So that means that particular organization no longer has to worry about that type of thing. Should give them more bandwidth to provide a more effective service. And on this one, ESIC will continue to provide funding. They have been providing funding to vibrant communities thus far. I'm actually on the provincial working group for integration of all the community inclusion networks around the province into regional service commissions, because that is what's happening around the province. Some areas are dysfunctional, some are less functional than others. Ours is pretty good. They've been doing good work, and we want to see that continue and make that even better. And that's our whole intention on that one. So regional transportation is another mandate. Vibrant Communities has already been in that space. They, as you know, they partner with Dial a Ride and some other activities like that. So what we're envisioning is that with the additional bandwidth that will gain, they'll be able to do some more work in that space on regional transportation. And we're hoping to enhance that service as things go along. And recreation cost sharing, that's now a mandated service. We've actually led the way on this one. Actually had a meeting earlier this week or earlier last week with the department, because they're trying to pick our brain to get the rest of the province on board with kind of the similar strategy that we have done here. We are going to be making some changes to our program because of the new entities, the new municipalities, and how that's going to play out. Essentially, it's the same though. So funding, the big question I get, and I certainly got in December when I presented this board of directors, and I continue to get, is where is all the money coming from for a lot of these services. Most of it is as yet undetermined. So as I said, ESIC is going to continue to support community development. So that one's pretty much taken care of. Recreation, we already know about. Transportation, we're going to roll up into community development. That leaves tourism promotion and economic development. So each one of these budgets, each one of these services has their own budget. Right now, we have three sort of distinct budgets. We have our solid waste budget. We have our planning budget. So that's our land use planning and building inspection department. And then we have a regional cooperative budget. So we have the three silos. Each one of these new services is going to get their own budget. And the concept has always been, unless the regulations change, the concept has always been that one will not cross over to another. So anything that comes into, say, our land use planning budget from income, and that's how we sort out, what it's actually going to cost you. And so this isn't going to be any different than that. What is becoming clear to me, and I'm just going to speak frankly here, what is becoming clear to me is that I've asked, we're on our second transition facilitator, by the way, we have a new one. And I've asked him, he's new, so he doesn't know the answers. And I've asked various places around, well, what's coming clear to me is that the government is not forthcoming with, here's money for this and here's money for that. We have to figure that out. But at the end of the day, I have to deliver these services. It is in legislation, and it's, if I can't get it from anywhere else, it's going to have to come from members. So that means that we're going to have, more discussions later on this year. So on top of all of our new mandated services, we're required to form a new public safety committee. And I've already been working with our REMC on this one. So this one's going to largely be a lot of public safety, leaders in our community. And that will include police and fire protection, EMO, a lot of people from public safety coming together as a committee. I've looked at and spoken to the committee that works in Kent Regional Service Commission. They have a fairly large one. There's like 20 committee members, includes everybody from every public safety department there, as well as some RSC board members. And they've been doing this for a couple of years, and it's working well. They come together and they find solutions that they might help each other on. So I'm hoping to model after that one. And our REMC is quite invested in this, and she's done a lot of work. She's quite excited about it. So she's going to be certainly a big part, and probably take the lead on getting this off the ground. So other changes to our service commission is that our boundaries are changing. Village of Harvey and Manor Sutton LSD are going to be with Fredericton, and we are gaining the Musquash area as Musquash and LaPro become a new entity in the eastern part of our region. We did have LaPro previously, but Musquash is brand new to us. So of the entities in our region, so St. Stephen's almost doubling in size. St. Andrews, as you know, you're taking on, I believe it's wards, and you can correct me there if I'm wrong, but I believe that the idea is to take on the new LSDs as wards. St. George, Blacks Harbor area, and Penfield and Fundy Bay and St. George LSD, and I think I missed an LSD in there, are becoming one new larger municipality. Population will be about 6,600 down there. LaPro, Musquash becomes a new municipality. And then McAdam, Campbell, Grand Manan, they all remain as they are. And then everything that's left becomes a rural district. So what that means for governance is that our current board of directors is 17 seats and plus alternates. So we have 2 LSD alternates plus all of your deputy mayors currently. The new board's going to be 7 mayors plus a representative from the rural district. Unclear about the alternates. I'm assuming it's the same thing. That wasn't really specified, but I'm going to guess. So we're going to have 8 seats on our board. So in thinking about this, our committee and our governance structure is going to change significantly. Right now, we have 6 standing committees made up of board members, plus our board itself. With a board of 8 people and 7 of them being mayors, I already have at least 2 meetings a month. I can't expect our mayors to be sitting on a bunch of standing committees. So committee structure is going to change. We're not going to have all the same standing committees. The board itself becomes the standing committee for things like HR, finance and audit, things like that, that we had as separate standing committees. There's really no point. We will have committees for things like community development. So that might be made up of the board of vibrant communities now. So there's going to be community members. The economic development, again, probably community members, might be a board member if they wish. The public safety committee, again, public safety professionals. So all of those types of committees are going to come more from the community, which I think is actually great. It's an increased layer of transparency, and you're getting more out in the community instead of the same people sort of into everything. And as I said, our board is mostly, it's 7 out of 8 of them are mayors. So they're just simply not going to have time. Like, I understand that. We might meet a little more often as a board. And I know that some municipalities do like a working session and then another session where all the motions and everything happen. So we may follow a similar structure. Not sure, but that's a good possibility at this point. So what does this mean for St. Andrews? So your solid waste is going to remain the same as far as we're concerned in terms of tipping fees and how that operates. Your collection contract is going to change because I'm assuming you're in charge of your new wards for collections. Planning services will incorporate the new wards, but overall the rate, when we calculate it out at budget time each year, we figure out what, how many cents per on $100 of assessment it works out for your planning service. That is just kind of a guide. It's entirely possible that's going to decrease, and that's going to depend a little bit upon whether or not the Musqueam-Pro municipality signs on to our planning service, which is, is the obvious thing that should happen, but I'm not guaranteed that at this point, because if they do, they're fairly large tax base because that includes Point-LaPro. So that'll be a bigger pool, and theoretically, your planning rate should decrease as a result. Recreation cost sharing is going to remain in place. We're going to have to rejig it a little bit with the expanded municipalities. So you'll be getting contributions from rural district as well as I'm not sure about the Eastern Charlotte one. We'll have to figure that one out. And St. Andrews is going to benefit from some of the new regional services like tourism promotion and regional economic development. Again, you're going to have local level stuff, I'm sure, especially in St. Andrews for tourism promotion. And we're not going to duplicate that, but we're going to enhance and add to that. And that can only be a benefit. I think I covered most of this already, but yeah, it means less committee requirements from our board members, but increased board meetings. With our new committees, we are going to be looking for members from the community to fill, and they're not going to have dozens and dozens of new committees, but you may consider council members. Not sure that, that's going to be within your purview to do that. The smaller board should be more nimble because we don't have to wait for standing committees to come back to the board with, so I'm hoping to kind of make it more efficient in terms of governance and give a little bit more transparency. And I've come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Hollis. I really appreciate you taking council through that. So just like the municipality is going through some changes and some transition, the Regional Service Commission is as well. So the first thing is that jumps out is, I don't know, I know a lot of people on this call have been on a number of different boards, but to have 17 directors on a board, that just in theory, you want representation, but there's also a number which makes it not as productive because everyone, doesn't have the opportunity to weigh in, or they do, the meeting goes lengthy. So I do welcome that change. And I do like the fact that it is going to be an opportunity to get counselors more engaged and more active on committees, but also community members, because of the mayors of every community aren't the expert on all those subject matters. So we do have local experts within our community and on our councils that we can lean on. So those are very good points. I'll open it up to see if there's any questions from any member of council. I have just a couple, but I'll open it to council first to see if there's any. Okay, the one I had, Hollis, was I know the last time we got together as a regional service commission, there wasn't a whole lot of details around tourism. So it sounds like the facilitators giving you a little bit more than before. Have they specifically talked about the tourism accommodation levy? And is that something that they're anticipating stays within the municipalities? Because I had a meeting last week with CCRTA and what we call Explore St. Andrews, which is our local board. And there's concerns because they have multi-year plans in place. They've got some good initiatives that they just got underway last year, and to get their feet chopped out of them in year two, it certainly would impact not just their efforts, but also volunteerism in our community as well. So I was wondering if you've got any clarity on that, as I still haven't got any from the province on my end yet.
No, I haven't got any more clarity from the province or anything like that, but it's becoming more and more clear to me that we're not going to get a huge amount of clarity throughout this year. And a lot of this is just left up to us to do. So we're just going to go ahead and do it as close as we can to regulate. And see, the regulations aren't out either. And there's going to be more than one regulation, and some of them aren't going to come out till late summer. So we can't wait that long. We have to kind of do things ourselves. I agree with you about CCRTA, and it's entirely possible that the answer might be just to partner with them and, just become more involved as, they'd be required to be involved with us as the regional tourism promotion service provider. So that might be the answer. I'm not 100% sure, but it will be something along those lines. I agree with you. I don't like the idea of going in and tearing it apart. All the groups, because there's a lot of people in our region that have been doing a lot of work as volunteers, and vibrant communities is a prime example of that. I really would hate to lose all the tribal knowledge, all of everything that they've accomplished. So therefore, when I spoke to them, and I'm speaking to them again this week, I explained that to them, and I want them to be part of the advisory committee, or be the advisory committee to the Regional Service Commission on the community development in our region. Because, it'd be a shame to waste all of that and lose all of that. And these people have a passion for it, have an experience with it. And, it would be senseless to throw that away, in my opinion.
Sounds good. And the comments taken that, the Charlotte Coastal Regional Tourism Association is a regional mindset, and then to have a different regional committee, they're basically redundant, whether we want to say it or not. So there's got to be some conversations there for sure. And then I'll check with staff as well. But my questions are in relation to contracts. So whether it be garbage removal, whether it be RCMP, is it expected that the municipality would just inherit the existing agreements, or is the impression that all of these contracts for garbage removal, for policing, will have to be renegotiated?
Couldn't tell you about policing. That one needs to be unwrapped, and unfortunately it doesn't fall within our purview. As far as garbage, I had brought up solid waste to transition folks numerous times, and every time I get a look like, when your dog's looking at you and they're trying to understand the words you're coming out of your mouth, that's kind of the look I get from them every time. Well, what does solid waste got to do with local governance reform? Well, it's got a lot of things to do with it. For instance, the different recycling program that will now be in Manor Sutton. What do I do with the recycling carts up there? The different recycling program that Musquash has, the contracts that you have, and so that I don't think it's been addressed, but I think for municipal garbage, I think you're going to need to refer to your transition facilitator, Don. And Don's a good guy. You've met him numerous times, I'm sure. I know Don well. So I think I think it's a question that needs to be asked soon, though. Because, everybody's going to have different contracts, and that is something that does need to be sorted out that I don't think anybody's really thinking about just yet. And so the earlier we start thinking about garbage contracts, I think you're going to be, the better off you're going to be. I think St. Andrews, because St. Andrews was always almost needs two trucks, but really one will do it kind of thing. It depends. And if it's the week after recycling, then you kind of need two. And so I think you're going to really realize a little bit of saving through economy of scale. Not sure how that's going to work out. And I haven't sat down and talked to the haulers yet to see, what they're thinking, because all of their contracts, their world's going to change completely. The rural district, for instance, right now is served half by Southern Sanitation, half by Faro. I'm assuming that's going to be a single contract, so I don't know.
Thank you for that. We have asked our facilitator, Mr. Spear certainly has. I think it was one of his first questions, but we're since I had another tree, I decided to try to shake this one as well. Is there any member of staff or anyone else that has any questions for Hollis? Really appreciate it. I see Mr. Spear came off mute.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Hollis, you talked about these community committees. Will all their decisions have to be run through the board, or are they going to kind of be acting on their own? Say, I don't know, like public transportation can kind of go down its own avenue and use the staff and yourself to keep it all coordinated, or is each of these committees basically going to report up to the regional board who will have to give approvals of any decisions?
All the committees are going to be sort of an advisory committee. Nobody can have a decision-making power. So, but, you know, assuming the committees are working well, then, you know, the board doesn't usually have an issue with the advisory committee's suggestions or you know, suggestions for motion, that type of thing. It's the same way it works now on our standing committees. Even though they might be made up of board members, no committee can make a decision. It has to go to a board for a motion for approval.
And I guess my only other question, because I think you've already answered this, but all these extra mandates, especially with economic development and things, are actually necessary now, right? Because early on, I thought they were going to be elective, at least on a community by community basis, but it sounds like when you talk about funding, it's kind of like planning that everyone's going to have to pay a little bit depending on the levels of services they have, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, none of this is optional. It's there, and you know, they want it done. They want us to do it, so they put it in legislation. I got to make it happen, and you know, none of this stuff is free. So that's the other big question of, you know, well, who's paying for this? Well, in the end, I look at it this way. In the end, if economic development was being paid for by ACOA or ONB or PEDAL or some other acronym, you know, agency out there, or it was just come straight out of Regional Service Commission, it's all taxpayer money in the end, right? So it's all public dollars, all taxpayer money. It's just that who gets blamed for the collection of it. And, you know, I don't want to dump this stuff on members. I really don't. But in the end, at the end of the day, I have to do these things. And if nobody else is forthcoming with the money, that's what's going to have to happen, unfortunately. It's not going to break anybody. You know, there's not going to be, you know, I'm not going to add $2 million to the budget and do it that way. And you're going to get lots and lots of warning, because I know you need to prepare budgets for 2023, same as me, and it's going to be much, you know, ahead of time. And the earlier I can get the cost down and where that money's coming from, you know, the better, because as soon as I know, you will know. But yeah, that's where we are with it right now.
Thank you, Hollis. Unless there's anything else. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Spear.
Sorry, just one last quick question. Sorry, Your Worship. Are you planning on hitting the ground running on January 1st with all these services? Is there potential that you'll transition into some of them into next year? So just to, you know, get everything else kind of worked up. Because for instance, our facilitator telling us we have to start discussing budgets in May. So it means you'd have to have your budget to me by then. And it just seems like we're trying to race, you know, so fast to get some of the stuff situated out for not necessarily good reasons, except that there's a deadline put on by the government, which may or may not make sense, you know, to put this stuff in solid. Thank you.
Well, I think the intention is that everything is more or less up and running by January 1st. I think the reality is it's not going to be. However, for some things, I'm actually aiming earlier than that. So I'm aiming for October 1st for as much as I can, any mandates that I can get put in place, like the community development one, for instance. The reason being, I want to leave the last quarter of this year as empty as possible, because I know it's going to be chaos. You know, like our board's going to have to dissolve in October, you know, municipal elections in November and swearing in, and there's just going to be, you know, regulations are going to be late. There's going to be, you know, anarchy at the last quarter of this year is what I'm anticipating. So as much as I can get done before then, I will. You know, there are certain things that are going to have to wait. And by January 1st, is everything going to be in place? Not 100% sure, probably not.
Thank you. All right, just in the essence of time, I wanted to say thank you very much, Hollis, for presenting. I was vocal when it came to town staff, but you're a steady hand for the RSC, and I understand that there's a process in regards to positions of the RSC, just like there was potentially with the town of St. Andrews. And I just wanted to publicly voice my displeasure when you have solid staff that are in place. Making them reapply for a job that they've done a good job at just doesn't make sense to me. And I've been very vocal about that, and I'll continue to be because the RSC has been very lucky to have you. And as we change completely the structure and have all these new identities, I couldn't imagine adding more transition to the process. So it just doesn't make sense to me. So thank you for being here, and I'll continue to be a voice when it comes to that, or for town staff for that issue as well. So thanks for your time this evening.
All right. Well, thank you for your support.
Thanks. All right, we're going to keep moving. We're going to jump right into the approval of the minutes from previous meetings. There is 3 sets. Was there anyone, just a quick, just a check-in, is there anyone that saw any changes they'd like to make to any minutes this evening? Is there any? I'm not seeing any. Okay, so that means I'm going to fly through them. So slow me down if not. But the first set is the minutes of the public hearing of objections to bylaw 22-01 on Monday, February 7th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. You're looking for a mover? I've got Councillor Heenan, a seconder, Councillor Blanchard. All those in favor of those minutes, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. Those have been carried. The next minutes are of the meeting 2202-07, regular council meeting on Monday, February 7th at 6:45. A motion to be adopted. A mover. Got Deputy Mayor Akaji, a seconder. Councillor Heenan. All those in favor of those minutes, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. Those are carried. And the last set is the minutes of the 2202-22 regular council meeting on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022 at 7:15 p.m. Looking for a motion to adopt those as well. A mover. I got Councillor Blanchard and seconded by Councillor Hurdle. All those in favor of those minutes, please signify by saying aye. And that's everybody. So those minutes have been carried. That was record time. We're getting right into communications. Pass it over to you, Mr. Spear, for the staff report.
Thank you, Worship. As spring begins to creep around the corner and COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, there is more optimism in the air as we plod through 2022. On behalf of staff, I want to thank Council for the opportunity to inform you and the public on the ongoing affairs of your local government. On Council, as of March 14th, most COVID-19 restrictions will be lifted in the province. During the pandemic, policies were established that were aligned with other municipalities, as well as a mandatory order from the public health officer. We should have a discussion in March if Council feels we should have a heightened protocol or continue to follow the best practices as before. Before you tonight is a motion to award a tender for the long-anticipated ladder truck for the St. Andrews Fire Department. Early in this Council's mandate, they set this as a priority in their first year. They budgeted for 2023, understanding there might be significant delays in production for this special apparatus, which is expected to be 22 months after placing the order. Also in front of Council tonight are 2 items related to funds distribution. The first is the release of some of the assistance grants to interested organizations. Up to and including 2019, the annual distribution was less than $10,000 per year. But in the next 2 years, the previous Council budgeted $25,000 in recognition of special circumstances related to specific initiatives and COVID. This year, it was decided to reduce the overall amount to $17,500 as Council focused on other priorities. Each of the applicants are worthy, but a larger discussion needs to be had on the purpose of assistance grants from Council's perspective. It is our recommendation the new policy be drafted for consideration for implementation later this year or at the start of 2023. Another policy before us is on the town's portion of the accommodation levy. Purposefully, the bylaw gives Council a fair amount of leeway in what defines tourism development. The purpose of the policy is to provide guidance to the community as well as staff and Council on the scope of and the mechanism to accessing the new pools of funds. After a couple of working sessions to discuss amendments to the zoning bylaw, Council is prepared to go to first reading tonight. The amendment is trying to increase densification to allow the construction of more housing inventory on less land, which should lower cost. Housing is definitely a crisis within the town, and because of the lack of public transportation and most services being centralized within a 4-block radius in the downtown, Housing within the plat is in most demand. During the initial priority setting discussions, it was recommended by the facilitator that we review the list occasionally, keep focused on what is important to council. There are a lot of initiatives before you in the upcoming year, and it would be useful for that exercise to sit down and review where you have come and where you'd like to go over the next year. Under administration, representatives from the town and the local service districts are working with the provincially appointed facilitator on the new reorganization for what is being called Entity 56 for now. It appears there will be a by-election in November to add new councillors from the LSDs to join our existing members, including Mayor Henderson. By the end of May, we will provide recommendations of what type of municipal entity we will become, and more importantly, the name of the new entity. Staff will also be engaging with a facilitator on the first steps of the 2023 budget in May. Staff will ensure to involve council. To ensure the reforms are all in place for the start of the new year, the province is leading the charge in the communication surrounding the changes. Council is being kept up to date on progress, but there is an expectation that more individuals can become involved through some of the steps. The town is working closely with the planners of the Service Commission as we review multiple active developments and have had a few potential investors approach us as to the best model. Currently, the emphasis by the private sector is on market price and not affordable units. So our focus is finding a model that lowers capital costs and allows for more affordable units. With the current lifting of restrictions, we are beginning to plan for Canada Day. After 2 years of restrictions, it'll be a great time to welcome the community back to town. We are cognizant of some of the concerns by those with health challenges, and we'll keep that in mind as we plan the event. Because of the risk associated with ransomware, especially as a result of the current war in Ukraine, staff have invested in better security services that provide redundant levels of protection in the town hall, at our facilities, and when staff or council members are signed in from home. A few years ago, this was barely a conversation that needed to be had, but now it is a vital part of town data and the personal data we have within the system. I would like to commend my team, as we've been short-staffed for a few weeks now as we battled COVID among various members and worked through transition periods between individuals in a couple of roles. Many of them put in extra effort, and the service level of key services was maintained. It was great to see, but I also approached another municipality in case we fell below a critical human resource level, and they offered us some people if required. Thankfully, we did not, but I am grateful for their offer. We are finally in the position to start advertising for the recreation director that was budgeted by council and will serve the local region through their tax dollar contributions as well. This individual will help connect the volunteer organizations as well as investigate increasing recreation opportunities in the area and diversify the activities that are currently offered. Under staff reports, the operations manager has been working with the engineering consultants on one of the most active construction seasons for the town of St. Andrews. With $2.7 million in budgeted infrastructure improvements, council has reinvested heavily back in the community. He has also taken a turn in the snow crew when we're short of manpower. He is also reviewing trails and development projects that will occur this year. The clerk senior administrator has been assisting myself in the recruitment of an accounting clerk and assistant treasurer. A lot of time has been spent in the development agreements that will be forthcoming to council as we've gone through several drafts. In addition to the snow clearing that took place in February, Public Works also painted the library and replacing the LED lights throughout. The Ross Memorial Library report has a couple of items of note. Volunteers will be completing simple tax returns for locals over the next few weeks. Please call the library to set up an appointment. There is a new initiative through the New Brunswick Public Library System that provides music lessons via the Artist Works application. Interested parties would need to supply their own instruments, but they have access to lessons from Grammy Award-winning artists to help improve their skills from beginners to advanced. The only condition is that you have a library card, so connect with them for more details. For members of the Youth Center, they are happy to returning to no COVID restrictions after 2 years of limited access, and for some members, no access. Staff are looking forward to welcome everybody back and moving forward with the new initiatives. They have also planned a March break camp for under 12 years old youth this week that will be supported by high school volunteers. It is a great opportunity for the volunteers to learn patience and teaching skills while giving back to the community. I would also like to acknowledge the Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews, who provided a financial donation that went towards recreation equipment, such as sporting equipment, video games, board games, and bicycles. They have been a key supporter of SIAC over several years. In conclusion, this year looks to be an exciting one for Council and the town of St. Andrews. With extra staff and continued reinvestment in infrastructure, we continue to move the town forward in a very positive direction. Council certainly understands the challenges of housing and is dedicating their time and staff resources in helping solve that. We are always eager to hear from the public and look forward in continuing this journey together. Respectfully submitted, Chris Spear, CEO, Treasurer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spear, for that report. We do know that summary does take a fair amount of time, so thank you. Anything you wanted to highlight on the financial side of things for now, or is everything still looking on budget?
I guess I will say, because of the weather, our salt budget's taken quite a beating, and the other thing is our labor budget. We're going to have a look at that in another month or two, but it's a lot of overtime this year. It's unfortunately, the storms all seem to start Friday night and continue through till Sunday, as probably personally a lot of us have seen, but as staff, we've been looking at it saying yikes, because there's overtime involved, of course, for those that are giving up. And some of the men went 2 or 3 weeks without any breaks, as they, working all the weekends and coming back for the regular shifts through the weeks. So a little bit of concern about that, but it's early in the year, and staff can certainly come up with recommendations to help alleviate that by the end of the year.
Perfect. And with fatigue of not having days off, is there any option of giving them a Monday, Tuesday off, for example, after a weekend of storms? Is that something that we've done in the past?
They've have opportunity because they're allowed to bank a few hours. So if they want to take time off, part of the problem was during this time of the year, it's hard to give them time off because of potential storms. But as we said before, we went about 4 weeks where we're short staffed because of COVID. So at the end of the day, it'll probably be into the spring before they be able to take advantage of that.
Perfect. Well, we certainly appreciate the extra time, because you do note that a lot of them have fallen on the weekend this year, unfortunately. So, but they do a great job. Any questions for Mr. Spear in regards to anything with staff report? I see Councillor Blanchard.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So it's for Mr. Spear or maybe Mr. Knopper. I'm not sure if you could provide some insight, but on the report from the operations department from Mr. Acton, he does list a meeting with the refrigeration contractor and discussing compressor upgrades for the arena. One of the things we've been looking at in terms of meeting our greenhouse gas emissions target was upgrades at the arena, changes to the arena to make it a little greener, a little more efficient. Do you know if that meeting was related to that, or is it in something else altogether? Or maybe should I contact Mr. Acton for some more details?
Well, I guess I'll say yes. This was planned before we got into looking at greenhouse gas emissions. That's just the ice plant's so old that we had to do some of this work. But he is asking that question about what can be done in discussions. And Paul sat with me on that. And I think they're saying that heat recovery that doesn't necessarily involve the compressors is probably the likely candidate for the most efficient reduction within the plant, that the compressors themselves will have some efficiencies because you're replacing something that's so old that'll, like other parts like the chiller and stuff, we're seeing less electricity being used just because you got new units in there. But as far as something that's going down a new design, at this point, probably not.
And through your worship, just on that, the compressors themselves, we looked at them. They will have an 8% energy efficiency over the current ones, and that's pretty standard for just the compressors. And to CAO Spears' point, when we look at the heat recovery systems and the changes already done last year to the arena system have drastically helped with the energy savings within that as well. So it's been piece by piece.
Thank you. But a very valid point, Councillor Blanchard. Whenever we do any capital repairs, we should always be asking ourselves, is there a greener solution? And when we get into capital projects for our budget setting time, I think we need to review all those and just have a check in there to give staff lots of more time to properly prepare. And of course, the numbers could very well look a lot different with that scope as well, as we all know. So, but great
yeah,
question.
and thank you. And like I said, a greener option, but also potentially over time a cost saving options too, right? Maybe more upfront to make those changes, but if we're saving energy and we're saving money over the long run, then I think they pay for themselves. So certainly worth looking at. Thank you.
Big time for sure, absolutely. And there might be some additional grants with that scope in mind as well. To your point, any other member of council have any questions? Okay, so appreciate the staff reports. I'll be looking for a mover to accept the staff reports as presented this evening. Got Councillor Heenan, a seconder. I've got Councillor Blanchard. We've already had questions and discussion, so I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand to signify support of the motion. That is everybody, so that one has been carried as well. We are now jumping into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. And the first one is the Town of St. Andrews Community Assistant Grants. We'll go to you, Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Thank you, Your Worship. FA 220302. And it's the Town of St. Andrews Community Assistant Grants for 2022. The Town of St. Andrews provides assistant grants to the community organizations, individuals, or groups that support the overall well-being of the town. Grants are earmarked to support projects that create economic benefit for the community and projects which support community projects that build involvement and pride. For 2022, the town received 12 grant submissions totaling $37,000 and $37,020. The budget for the funds for 2022 is $17,500. Provided with this motion report is a summary document of grants received, amounts requested, briefing notes, and staff recommendation for council's consideration. So the motion is that council allocates the 2022 assistant grants funding to the following user groups and in the amounts of, and there's a list of them. I don't know if you want me to go through them individually. And I so move.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate that. So we are going to go through these quickly, and you can see that the staff has made recommended motions. So that will be what we're going to fill in the blanks today. This isn't a fun exercise because there's a lot of organizations that are worthy, but the reality is if you have this much in funding requests with that budget, unfortunately, you do have to make some tough decisions. So what I'd recommend something to consider is versus the FEDA motion, give it $0. That would lock it in for essentially 6 months. Is if we're determining at this point that we don't have funds available or not going to, I'd recommend just tabling it. So that way if they come back with something else or some new information, it gives us the ability to bring these back in the future, if that makes sense. So the first one, if we jump into it.
Your Worship, can you get a seconder for the motion before you start discussion?
Well, what I was wondering, well, we could look for a seconder. I was wondering if we could just move one by one on them and then just approve the amounts individually by motion. But I guess since there is a mover, what I'm actually proposing is we break these out and don't have them all lumped together. Does that make sense to everybody? So, Councillor Gumichel.
Sorry to interrupt, Your Worship, but I think staff's done a lot of work here, and I think we could just I would second a motion to pass it as is.
So recommendation would be to accept the staff recommendation. See, myself, I have no objection to that. That's fine with me. Does anyone? Is that what you're moving for, Deputy Mayor? Is to as per the assistant grants as circulated by staff? Is that correct?
I was thinking that this should be announced, should it not, in public, so that we're transparent with what we're doing with the money.
It certainly should be. It's just the motion doesn't say if we're going to be going with the staff recommendation or we're setting our own. It just says that the amounts of, and we have to determine what those amounts are. So Councillor Gumichel is proposing that we just accept staff amounts that are circulated. Myself, I'm in favor of that. Not that I'm voting, but is that something that you were willing to move on, I guess?
I would prefer that all council has a voice in this, and I don't think everybody has chimed in yet, and we haven't, because we don't have the seconded by, and that they can voice their opinions. But I have no problems with recommendations of what staff has recommended, but I still believe that we should announce it so that because we are the only ones that have these papers in front of us.
Absolutely. So if you move and Councillor Gumichel seconds, it would then open up the debate where all members of council could weigh in, right?
Yeah.
So yes. Would you move with the staff recommendation? If you don't, Councillor Gumichel will be obviously moving for that.
Okay, I will move that we accept staff recommendations. Just
okay
on the board for the council.
Councillor Gumichel, you're seconding that one?
Yes, thank you, Worship.
Thank you. So what I'll do is if it is approved is I'll announce them all, Deputy Mayor, at the end, just so everybody has for public record what all those amounts are. So we'll open up this discussion at this point. With staff recommendations, does anybody have any concerns over that, or is that something that you seem, Councillor Blanchard?
Thank you, Worship. So I guess if we've done it this way, I would require, I'd have to move for an amendment, I guess, right? If I wanted to make a change here.
Correct.
And look for a seconder.
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to move just an amendment to the current motion. I would like to see for the New Brunswick wood carving competition, the request was for $3,500, and council had previously provided support of $3,000 for the event, but the event was canceled in 2021. The staff recommendation was down to $500. I would like to make an amendment to see that come to $1,000. That would be, like I said, that would be my amendment.
Perfect. So we'll look for a second. I think staff's, I might be wrong, staff's idea of the 500 is they could also apply to TALB, maybe. Is that correct, Mr. Spear, as far as festivals and events? Just to be clear, there's another source of money for them as well. Is that?
Well, that's part of it, Your Worship, but part of the money that the previous council was allowed was for prize money, and I'm not sure that's consistent with what the previous use of the assistance grants was, but that's certainly up to council how they'd like to go. So the $500 was to help the grade 11 class pay for set up and tear down, and to sponsor that for them. But that's whatever.
Perfect. So I'll look for a seconder for the $1,000 if anyone would like to second that. Right now it's sitting at 500. So 1,000 for wood carvers, looking for a seconder. Again, if not, it'll default back to the 500. One more call for a seconder.
Point of information, if I could, to Councillor Blanchard, if that's all right.
Yep.
Before I second it, if that's okay.
Yep.
Is there a specific something earmarked for the additional $500 in funding in your mind, Councillor Blanchard, that maybe I don't see?
No, I think it was going based on what the previous allotment was at 3,000, and where the competition does bring a fair number of people into the community. I think it's reasonable request, and I think it deserves additional support from council.
Thank you, Councilor Bench. So I will call one more time. Is there a seconder for that request? Okay, I'm not seeing one, so unfortunately that one will not go through. So we're back to the original motion. Is there any more discussion on the original motion of accepting the staff recommendations on the assistant grants? All right, then I will call the question then. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. And that's everybody, so that has been carried. So I will quickly read through what the assistant grants are for public record. The St. Andrews Paddling Club for $500 that will assist their Dragon Boat race days for 2022. We've got $500 for Charlotte County Ground Search and Rescue. We've got $500 which will be provided to support the Propel Extended Program with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We have $2,000 that will be dispersed through the Albert McQuaid Trust to the Vincent Massey Elementary Home and School Association. We've got $2,000 for a one-time project with the Friends of Pagan Point. We have $2,500 going to Charlotte County Dial-A-Ride. We have $500 to the New Brunswick Wood Carving Competition and Sale. We have $2,000 to the St. Andrews Arts Council. And staff will be looking with the St. Andrews Farmers Market to potentially sponsor 2 events. Let me just jump over here. It looks like we'll be giving $1,000 to Sunbury Shores Arts and Nature. And then there'll be a follow-up conversation with the Friends of Langmaid Park, as there has to be a concept plan and presentation for council. So that one we will take separately. And Charlotte County archives at this point. The landlords are responsible for most of the cost. Obviously, we're supporting quite a bit. So there will be in 2022, council authorized continued payment. So at this point, we'll have to have more conversations with Charlotte County Archives before money's funded. So thank you, Councillor Gumashal, for making that recommendation. It sped up the process. So well done to you. Appreciate it. At this point, we are jumping ahead with the correction that Councillor Blanchard caught. We're going to Councillor Neal in regards to a tender.
Your Worship, this is reference number FA 220303, and the subject is the tender award single axle 100-foot aerial truck. The background reads, as part of the 2022 budget deliberations, council budgeted $1.5 million excluding tax in 2023 for a ladder truck for the fire department. On February 25th, 2022, tender TSA-2022-008 had only one submission from Safety Source Fire Inc. for a 100-foot Pierce ladder truck. The submitted price was $1,706,065.25, taxes included. After the harmonized sales tax rebate, the cost of the unit will be approximately $1.55 million. After reviewing the document, the fire chief is satisfied the apparatus meets all the requirements of the tender and can be awarded. The delivery time is approximately 22 months. So the motion reads that council award tender TSA 2022-08 single axle 100-foot aerial truck to Safety Source Fire Inc. for the amount of $1,706,065.25. And with a large sigh of relief, I so move this.
Hasn't passed yet. A seconder. Deputy Mayor Akinji, we'll open up discussion for this one. Okay, seeing none, so I will call the question. All those in favor of approving this motion, please signify by saying aye. Let's come quick hands there. That has been approved. I just wanted to say for those watching at home, this wasn't our first conversation on this. It was part of our priority setting. It's something that we wanted to do for the town of St. Andrews. And since it is a significant amount of money, I do want to note the benefits that this is going to be to the community. Not only is it going to help save lives, which is the most important thing that it will do, it is going to help keep our fire department members, our volunteers safe. We had some concerns from the St. Andrews Volunteer Fire Department, and I just want to recognize council and staff for acting on this and finding a solution. And of course, their patience with this. We do obviously take their safety very seriously, and not to ever forget the fact that we are a heritage town. We have a lot of buildings that are close together in the downtown core. We have tall buildings like the Algonquin Resort. This could be a game changer in a fire. So well done to council. This is a big purchase, and well done to staff as well, as this will be a wonderful resource for the community moving forward. So congratulations to all of you for your efforts behind this one. At this point, we're going to move to Councillor Gumashal.
Thank you, Your Worship. The reference number for this item is RCS 220301, submitted by myself, and the subject is Cadets Long-Term Use of Space Discussion. And the background reads, Lieutenant Aaron Bennett, lead of the Funday Sea Cadets, has submitted for a waiver of fees for use of the W.C. O'Neill Arena for the season. Due to the nature of the request, time of use, and storage office use, staff are bringing the discussion forward to the council on the use of space by the cadets. Please see the attached staff report and associated background documents for further information on the request. Staff is recommending the council consider a long-term agreement that allows the cadets ongoing use of space at the W.C. O'Neill Arena. And the motion reads that council agrees to sign into long-term use of space agreement for the W.C. O'Neill Arena with the Funday Sea Cadets, with terms and conditions to be negotiated with the Chief Administrative Officer. And I'd make that motion. Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gumashal, seconder for that motion. I've got Councillor Blanchard. We'll open up for discussion. Anything staff like to add on this one? It is a new one for us, but it really is giving the CAO his discretion on reaching an agreement for long-term use for the cadets. Go ahead, Mr. Spear, open, then we'll pass it to Mr. Hurdle is next.
Okay, thank you, Worship. I would like to note too that the Sea Cadets wasn't mentioned in the background, but are offering to help us out through buying common equipment. So for this year, for instance, that they've bought a 60-inch TV to place in the arena for everyone's use, as well as coat racks. And so they're given, even though as a unit, they're not given operating funds to pay rent, they are given capital funds to help with the programming that can be used, you know, for the common good. In addition, they do some volunteering within the community on behalf of town. Plus, they do some work with the Legion as well. So even though it's in-kind use, they are going to be doing some things in kind on behalf of council. Following up with other municipalities, there are a handful of municipalities that are under a similar arrangement where, because of the way National Defense sets up the Cadet Corps, they don't charge them any rent, but tries to get them to do other things on behalf of the community in order to be the, you know, the financial contribution through in-kind services. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Is it safe to say, though, that things like the TV and the coat rack are now, those are property of the arena, meaning that if they ever found another facility and we're waiving rent, that we don't lose all those capital projects or assets?
I guess it happened so fast, we haven't had that discussion yet. So it's just how fast I can stick it in my car and run out of town with it, I guess. But we'll have to see. We'll have that discussion with Lieutenant Bennett, and just to see what the long-term plans is if they ever do find a secondary home.
Yeah, thank you. Just a point of clarification. We'll go Councillor Hurdle, then Councillor Heenan. Thank you, Your Worship. And Mr. Spear, you more or less answered my question that I had anyway. But it was just regards, this is a bit of a sticky wicket around the fact that the Sea Cadets are a federal entity. They are part of the federal government, and they're asking for pro bono use of municipal services. So my question, I guess, is around, do we have a calendar of what this looks like, of how often they'll be using the facilities? And because we are looking at trying to expand the usage of the arena to other groups, and I just want to make sure that there's no conflict in this case. And if it is part of their operation to not anywhere, you know, have federal spending cover rent for them, that's fine. But I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Yeah, no, that's why I asked other municipalities, and some of them will issue an annual assistance grant that pays the town back for the use, but for whatever the reason, I guess because it's national defense, the stepping stones to national defense, they think community should be able to kick in space. And I know years ago when I was growing up, the schools in the area used to house the cadets. And so I think that's part of their plan, to make it a community thing. I will say, I just know Tuesday nights they meet, and then 2 or 3 weekends a year, they'll have doing a special event. What I did mention in the report, I can say to the public, is like last year, now this year, they're hosting a special camp, we'll call it, at the arena, where they're going to bring in multiple groups. They're actually paying for the use of that space. So for special events like that, they do pay. So that's actually very beneficial during the summer, because there's, you know, hardly any other customers through the day that want to use the space, you know, weekends, and for weddings it tends to be. So that's a good side benefit for the town of St. Andrews, to have them using that for that week in July or August to host other cadet corps up in the town.
Thank you very much. It's Councillor Hurdle. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council. In the background, I just find it a little contradictory that we say has submitted a waiver of fees for the use of the W.C. O'Neill Arena for the season. And then we're giving our Mr. Spear, CAPO, the jurisdiction to work it out with the cadets. Well, I find that contradictory. I believe that if we're giving the power to our Mr. Spear, we shouldn't have the waiver in the background, like a waiver for the use of the WC. Like that would be, in my opinion, up to Mr. Spear if he's going to waiver the fee or not that it be in there. I just find it a contradiction of terms. We're saying Mr. Spear can make the decision and work it out with the lieutenant. Well, then in the background, it mentions a waiver. So I'm just kind of confused. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, Mr. Spear, you can respond to that, of course.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Part of the issue is we, pre-Christmas, I think, we set up a waiving of fees policy for the town that gave me certain powers, but it had a limit on the number of meetings that could be done for a year. And it certainly was supposed to be for just short term things as opposed to something that's kind of like a permanent resident there, because they do have use of office space tucked in the back besides CHCO. So that's why I felt I should bring it to council for their discussion, because we're kind of getting into like a long-term lease arrangement, maybe a year at a time or something. But that's why I felt it was necessary. That was beyond the staff's ability to approve this.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Spear. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Akaji.
What constitutes long-term? I mean, is it forever? Is it, you know, Mr. Spear has just said 1 year, and I firmly believe that he, in the capable hands of our CAO, it will be fine. But I'm just wondering, is this for life and it's not going to be brought forward to council again, or are they permanently going to be a resident of the arena and wherever else they're going to meet in our area?
Never be for life. I'm not a big believer in that, for sure. But maybe council should, maybe that should be an amendment to the motions, what you consider good. I'd say 2 to 3 years, just so we don't have to revisit it every year. But it would be good that you give me direction on what you consider is appropriate timeline to sign this lease.
Good question, Deputy Mayor. You have a follow-up?
Yeah, I don't want to say I'm against it. I just think that, you know, to give them, you know, an unlimited amount when we limit everybody else, I think we should do it. And I think 3 years probably would be a good term, and then renew it every 3 years. That would be my suggestion. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
No problem. Yes, Mr. Spear.
Sorry, Your Worship, just real quick. I just want to let council know that it's not unlimited use of the space. I mean, they can't sit up there 7 days a week. It'd be specified. The regular meetings are Tuesday nights, and then they have access to a handful of days through the, you know, weekends through the year. They do drills of stuff that they like to do on the weekend. So it just sets up a tight schedule of what they're going to be, and they know they have use of the office space continuing on.
Mr. Spear, I don't think we need to amend the motion, do we? We could just, you've got direction from council that 3 years. I don't think we need to. Did you have a follow-up, Deputy Mayor Akaji? I saw your hand again.
No, I don't want to be, you know, like against it, because I'm fully for the cadets, but, and I fully am for the CAO running this, because he's quite capable of handling what our thoughts are. And I wasn't saying that they had all the space. I was assuming that just their spaces that they are using. And I know that they only use it one Tuesday, and then weekends throughout the year. And we've always agreed to that. So, and we want to keep supporting the cadets, because they are a worthwhile group. So thank you,
Deputy Mayor. I certainly appreciate that. And Mr. Spear, just the thing I want to add on that is, I'm sure you're going to do it anyways, just to give some flexibility. Just a one-off, like the Prime Minister's visit, stuff like that, that if there's ever some type of event, that it gives us the flexibility to adjust that without them holding us to the agreement. That's it for comments. So there's no other questions, just making sure. What I'll do is I'll call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. That motion has been approved. Thank you. We are now heading into our largest section this evening, which is planning and economic development. Councillor Heenan.
Yes, Your Worship and Council, it's me again for the rest of the duration. Here we go. PED 220102, Amendment MP 20-04 to Municipal Plan MP 20-01 for rezoning of Kingsbury Arms in second and third reading. Kathy Diane Lewis in 722892 NB Limited at 219 King Street, known as Kingsbury Arms, is seeking rezoning of the property from service residential to tourist commercial zone. This property has been known as tourist accommodation facility for the last 25 years. The proposed amendments to the municipal plan would change the property from a residential designation to a commercial designation on generalized future land use map. The following steps have been completed in the amendment process. First reading of Amendment MP 20-04 was held January the 17th of 2022. Presentation on Amendment of MP 20-04, January 31st, 2022. 2022. Obtain views of PAC for MP 2004 was held on February the 16th, 2002. Public hearing of objections was today, MP 2004, March 7th, 2022. The motion that council grants leave for the second reading of amendment MP 20-04 to the Town of St. Andrews Municipal Plan MP 20-01 for Miss Kathy Diane Lewis, 722-892 NB Limited, Kingsbury Arms in PID 01323328, 150970058 and 1515954, 219 King Street, move from residential designation to commercial designation to the generalized future land map. And I so move this, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Seconder, Deputy Mayor Akergy. Discussion, comments? Okay, call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody. That motion has been carried. So I will read it by title, that this is a bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-01, being municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. It was read the first time, as it stated, on the 17th of January. It's being read the second time here on March 7th, 2022. So we'll go to the next motion rather.
Yes, your worship and council. That council grants leave for the third and final reading of amendment MP 20-04 to the Town of St. Andrews Municipal Plan MP 20-01 for Kathy Diane Lewis, 722892 NB Limited, Kingsbury Arms in PID 013233328, 150970058 and 1515954, 219 King Street, move from residential designation to commercial designation to the generalized future land use map. And your worship, I so move.
Thank you once again, Councillor Heenan. And can we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Akergy, I will open it up for discussion. Didn't have any last time, don't expect it this time, so call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. That's everybody. So I will go to third reading, and once again, just read it by title. It is bylaw to amend bylaw number MP 20-01, being a municipal plan bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. It's read the first time the 17th day of January 2022, read the second time on the 7th day of March 2022, and read the third and final time on the 7th day of March 2022. I'll be in later this week to sign those, Mr. Knopper. And we're on to the next motion, Mr. Heenan, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you very much, your worship and council. It's PED 220101, Amendment Z21-07 to zoning bylaw Z21-01, rezoning Kingsbury Arms in second and third reading. Ms. Kathy Diane Lewis and 722892 NB Limited at 219 King Street, known as Kingsbury Arms Inn, is seeking rezoning of the property from service residential to tourist commercial zone. This property has been known as a tourist accommodation facility for the last 25 years. The proposed amendment to the zoning bylaw would move them into a commercial zone and allow them to offer licensed premises as a secondary use within the inn. The first reading, your worship, was on January the 17th, 2022. Obtained views of PAC February 16th, 2022, and public hearing of objections March the 7th, 2022. The motion that council grants leave for the second reading of the amendment Z2107 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z21-01 for Miss Kathy Diane Lewis, 722892 NB Limited, Kingsbury Arms Inn, PID 013233328, 150970058 and 1515954, 219 King Street, rezoning from service residential zone to tourist commercial zone. And I, your worship, so move.
And a seconder for that one. Got Councillor Heenan in second place this evening, so he gets the seconder. And any discussion on this one?
Your worship, was that
Yeah.
Councillor Heenan twice, or was that Councillor
Oh,
Hurdle?
sorry, I meant to say Councillor Hurdle. My bad. I said Councillor
Thank
Heenan. There you go. Thank you.
I was worried.
I don't think you're allowed to second it. So
No, I didn't think so.
Discussion. Okay, call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand again. Everybody, that has been carried. So second reading, I'll read this one by title as well. It's a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z21-01, being a zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. It was read the 17th day of January 2022. Read the second time on the 7th day of March 2022. And we're on to the next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. The motion is that council grants leave for the third and final reading of Amendment Z21-07 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw, Z21-01 for Miss Kathy Diane Lewis, 722-892 NB Limited, Kingsbury Arms Inn, PID 013233328, 15097-058, and 151595444. 219 King Street, rezoning from serviced residential zone to tourist commercial zone, and I so move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder. Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion. Call the question. All those in favor of this, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. So we will go to third and final reading. This is a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z21-01, being a zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. It was read the first time the 17th day of January 2022, read a second time the 7th day of March 2022, and read the third time for the 7th day of March of 2022. We're on to the next one.
Thank you, Your Worship. Here we go again. This is PED 220203, Amendment Z21-08 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw, Z21-01, second and third reading. In May of 2021, the Planning Review and Adjustments Committee for the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission provided a temporary use allowance to Mr. Mark Trudell for short-term rental accommodation in a detached garage at 285 Parr Street. The temporary use was issued as the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z21-01 does not allow for short-term rentals in a multiple residential one zone. The regulation was geared towards apartment complex and not single family dwellings. Mr. Trudell owns a single family dwelling in MR1 zone. In service residential zones, short-term rentals are allowed as a secondary use. As there were no issues with the temporary use, it is staff recommendation to introduce an amendment to zoning bylaw Z21-01 to allow for a single family dwelling in an MR1 zone to have short-term rental units. First reading was February the 7th, 2022. Obtained views from the PAC February 16th, 2022. Public hearing of objections tonight, March the 7th at 2022. The motion, Your Worship, that council grants leave for second reading to the amendment Z21-08 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z21-01, a text amendment for the multiple residential one zone to limit one short-term rental unit as a secondary use, and I so move it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heenan, a seconder for that one. Councillor Gumashell, discussion? Call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just had a quick comment.
Sorry.
Just on that, I think we need to be clear too. This when this applies, this only applies for because it does apply to the MR1 zone, but it only applies for the short-term rental. Only applies for a single-family rental where it would be applicable in other zones, right? So, for example, this doesn't change it so that an apartment could potentially become a single or a short-term rental. I just want to make that clear to anybody that might be watching.
That's a good clarification and correct. That's correct, Mr. Gopin. Just always want to double check before we move on. So a very good point. So anyone else? Call the question then. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. That has been carried. So we will go to second reading, and I'll do this one by title as well. It is a bylaw to amend bylaws number Z21-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. It was read the first time on the 7th day of February 2022 and read the second time here on the 7th day of March of 2022. And we'll go to the third reading. Councillor Heenan, if you want to read the motion.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. That Council grant leave for third and final reading to Amendment Z21-08 to the Town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw Z21-01, a text amendment for the multiple residential 1 zone to limit 1 short-term rental unit as a secondary use, and I so move.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Gubischel, discussion. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. That's everybody. We are in third reading, so it is a bylaw to amend bylaws number Z21-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. And it was read the first time the 7th day of February of 2022, and it was read the second and third time here on the 7th day of March 2022. So we'll sign that one as well. Next one, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's PED 220302. Subject zoning bylaw Z22-01, first reading. The town of St. Andrews passed the zoning bylaw Z21-01 in March of 2021. Over the past year, staff have been working with the bylaw and have identified several changes to enhance the bylaw and encourage development in the community. Over the past month, Council has had 2 workshops to discuss the proposed changes with staff. Provided with this report is a summary document outlining the proposed changes that Council has consensus on during the workshop, and copy of the proposed zoning bylaw Z22-01 with proposed changes. Motion that Council grants leave for first reading to zoning bylaw Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. I would so move that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Neal. Open up discussion. We've seen this one a couple times. We got some consensus on a number of the items. Keep in mind it's first reading, and we do need views by the Planning Advisory Committee if that goes ahead for the next motion. So any discussion on this one, as there is a lot to it. Okay, we've talked about this at length, so we'll call the question. All those in favor of going to first reading, please signify by saying aye. And that is everybody, so that has been carried. So I am not going to read this all. Do I have to read it by title, or what's the best way to go about this, Mr. Knopper?
Your Worship, for now, just read it by title. I will set up when we go forward, similar to other bylaws, we'll have it out so that you can read it by title for all 3 readings.
Okay, sounds good. So to read this by title, am I essentially doing what's in the almost the table of contents? Is that the best bet to do this?
That's correct.
Oh, lucky me, guys. This is why I get paid the big money. Bear with me. All right. So here we go.
Would you just hold it up?
This is the town of St. Andrews zoning bylaw number Z22-01. So I'll read it by title. Under 1, it's title and scope. 1.1 definitions. 2.0 administrative and interpretive clauses. 2.1 zoning classifications. 2.2 powers of the town council. 2.3 special powers of the Planning Advisory Committee and Regional Service Commission. 2.4 licenses, permits, and compliance with other bylaws. 2.5 metric measurements. 2.6 zone boundaries. 2.7 zoning bylaw amendments. 2.8 uses permitted. 2.9 interpretation. 2.10 images. 2.11 the use of italics and underline. 2.12 development permits and fees. 3.0 general provisions. 3.1 permitted uses and requirements. 3.2 number of buildings on a lot. 3.3 existing undersized lots. 3.4 existing buildings. 3.5 non-conforming uses. 3.6 uses permitted in all zones. 3.7 uses prohibited in all zones. 3.8 utilities and infrastructure. 3.9 access to lots. 3.10 mixed uses. 3.11 reduced frontage on a curb. 3.12 line of vision at an intersection. 3.13 accessory buildings or structures erected prior to main building. 3.14 height exceptions. 3.15 Prohibition regarding yards and other open spaces, 3.16, building and structure project projections, permitted encroachments, 3.17, enclosures of swimming pools, 3.18, power lines over swimming pool, 3.19, finished floor above grade, 3.2, 0 garbage storage, 3.21, fences, 3.22, exterior lighting or illuminated devices, 3.23, change of lot by infilling or excavation, 3.24, keeping of livestock and chickens, 3.25, queuing spaces, 3.26, car and bicycle parking requirements, 3.27, parking lot and driving requirements, 3.28, loading standards, 3.29, mobile vending facilities, 3.30, landscape buffers and landscaped areas, 3.31, setback from ordinary high watermark, 3.32, development within the town plat and environs and historic business district, 3.33, licensed premises, 3.34, short-term rentals, 3.35, protection from deer, 3.36, windows in the historic business district, 4.1, general provisions of all residential zones, 4.11, requirements for row house dwellings, 4.12, private garages and carports, 4.1.3, uses prohibited in certain yards, 4.1.4, landscaping, 4.1.5, residential development near lagoon or treatment plant, 4.1.6, portable or temporary garages, 4.1.7, accessory uses, buildings and structures in a residential zone, 4.1.8, home daycares, 4.1.9, home-based businesses, 4.1.10, bed and breakfast, 4.1.11, boarding houses, 4.1.12, group homes, 4.1.13, standards for apartments, dwellings, seniors, citizens, housing, residential care facilities, 4.114, amenity space requirements for apartment dwellings, seniors, citizens, housing, and residential care facilities, 4.1.15, requirements for 2 family dwellings, triplexes, and converted dwellings, 4.2.1, SR zoning permitted uses, 4.2.2, SR zone uses subject to terms and conditional uses, 4.23, SR zone standards, 4.2.4, accessory building height, 4.25, use of front yards, 4.2.6, minimum ground covered floor, minimum ground floor area, 4.3.1, SRC zone permitted uses, 4.3.2, application of SR zone and SRC zone, 4.4.1 is ER zone permitted uses, 4.4.2 is ER zone uses subject to terms and conditions, conditional uses, 4.4.3 ER zone standards, 4.4.4 accessory building height, 4.4.5 use of front yards, 4.4.6 minimum ground floor area, 4.5.1 MR1 zone permitted fees, 4.5.2 converted dwelling units, 4.5.3 MR1 zone standards, 4.5.4 accessory building height, 4.5.5 use of front yards, 4.5.6 minimum floor area, 4.6.1 permitted uses, 4.6.2 MR2 zone standards, 4.6.3 accessory building height, 4.6.4 use of front yards, 4.6.5 minimum floor area, 5.1.1 commercial landscaping and screening requirements, 5.1.2 accessory buildings and structures in commercial zones, 5.1.3 specialized requirements for auto-oriented uses and gas bars, 5.2.1 CC zone permitted uses, 5.2.2 CC zone uses subject to terms and conditions, conditional uses, 5.2.3 CC zone requirements, 5.2.4 use of front yards, 6.1.1 insta zone permitted uses, 6.1.2 institutional zone uses subject to terms and conditions, conditional uses. Wow, there's a lot more. 6.1.3 institutional zone requirement, 6.1.4 screening, 7.0 which is environmental recreation zone, 7.1 which is green space zone, 7.1.1 is green space zone permitted uses, 7.1.2 development standards, 7.2 is the environmentally significant area zone, 7.2.1 is the environmental significant area zone permitted uses, 7.2.2 is the development standards, 7.3 is Navy Island zone, 7.3.1 is Navy Island zone permitted uses, 7.3.2 is Navy Island zone standards, 7.3.3 is use of front yards, 7.3.4 is maximum floor area, 7.3.5 is trees, 7.3.6 is garbage removal, 7.3.7 is services, 7.3.8 is environmental and health Consideration 7.4 is sea level rise overlay zone. 8.0 is signage. 8.1 is definitions. 8.2 is administration. 8.3 is signage permits. 8.4 is applications and plans. 8.5 is signage variances. 8.6 is prohibited signs. 8.7 is number of signs on a residential property. 8.8 is number of signs on commercial properties. 8.9 is number of signs in institutional green space zones. 8.10 is sign area calculations. 8.11 rather is general standard for signs. 8.12 is standards for specific types of signs. 8.12.1 is fascia sign. 8.12.2 is freestanding signs. 8.12.3 is awnings. 8.12.4 is street banners. 8.12.5 is non-commercial temporary signs. 8.12 is projecting of flag signs. 8.12.7 is window signs. 8.13 is maintenance and signs. 8.14 is non-conforming existing signs. 8.15 is election signs. 8.16 is exemptions. 8.17 is abandoned unlawful signs. 8.18 is refusal of a sign permit. 8.19 revocation of a sign permit. 9.0 is repeal and transition. Schedule A is the zoning map. Schedule B is the map with the historic plat, the historic business district, town plat environs. And Schedule C is sea level rise overlay zone map. I only butchered a couple of those, so it was read the first time on, thank you, on March 7th, 2022. I almost want that motion defeated so I don't have to do that again. So we're through to that one. So the next one, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would you reread that, please? Oh, sorry. Motion that council requests the views of the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews as per section 110 of the Community Planning Act to zoning bylaw Z22-01, being the zoning bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
And a seconder. Councillor Neal. Discussion on that one. Call the question. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. That's everybody. So we will go ahead and do that. Next motion.
Next motion, Your Worship and Council, that Council sets the date of Monday, April the 4th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. for a public hearing of objections as per section 111 of the Community Planning Act to zoning bylaw Z2201, being zoning bylaw for the Town of St. Andrews. I so move.
Seconder for that one. Deputy Mayor Akagi, discussion. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody. That's been approved, and we're on to the next motion.
Thank you, Worship. It's PED 220303. Amendment MP 20-05 to Municipal Plan MP 20-01 for rezoning of 258 Montague Street. The Town of St. Andrews has received a zoning request with Municipal Plan Amendment from 258 Montague Street. Benjamin and Zainab Faulkner Malek, owners of 258 Montague Street, the Montague Rose and Bed and Breakfast PID 013-20894 is seeking a rezoning from service residential to tourist commercial zone to allow for a in bracket tea room unbracket restaurant that is open to the general public in addition to existing bed and breakfast. The Planning Review and Adjustments Committee, PRAC, provided a temporary use permit in May of 2021 for the owners to test the tea room concept. Please see attached bylaw and report from Mr. Gopin, Senior Planner, providing further background on this request. As there is a request for multiple plan amendment, a public presentation is the first step in this process. The motion, Your Worship, is that Council sets the date of March 21, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. through public meeting for a public presentation as per section 25-1 of Community Planning Act on amendment of MP 20-05 to the Town of St. Andrews Municipal Plan for Benjamin and Zanny Faulkner Malay, Montague Rose Bed and Breakfast, PID 301320894 at 258 Montague Street, move from residential designation to commercial designation on the generalized future land use map. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Hurdle, discussion on that one. Okay, call the question. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye, Worship.
That's everybody. So that has been carried as well. That wraps up motions for this evening. Thank you very much, Councillor Heenan. You had that up. I think you read more than me. So thank you for doing that. There's no new business. Anything under question period, Mr. Knopper?
Your Worship, I haven't received any questions via email. We do have two people sitting in our attendees, so we can go to our attendees. We have Leanne Goodall and Marlo Glass. Do either of you have a question for council? If so, can you please raise your hand? I'll give another call. Those in attendees who have any questions for council based on tonight's agenda, can you please raise your hand?
Mr. Knopper, within the chat, there was somebody who asked, but the name I'm not sure is legitimate.
And that is, they are no longer on the call, and I wasn't going to ask them unless they had a legitimate name. So, Your Worship, I see no hands.
Yeah,
I see no hands raised. So, yeah, you're good to continue.
Thank you. Any comments by any member of council? Okay, I've got two. So the first one is Councillor Gumashall.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to thank staff for all of their hard work on the disbursements budget and giving the rationales for why they for the budget constraints and why they came up with those numbers. It's certainly on the past council, we spent hours and hours going over it, in which wasn't the most productive exercise, and having all that hard work ahead of that discussion certainly expedited that process. And so thank you to staff. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. And I'd agree. It was a lot quicker and also a lot more respectful, because indirectly sometimes things can be skewed a little differently. So thank you for that, Councillor Gumashall. Deputy Mayor Akaji.
Just to thank staff for everything, as like Councillor Gumashall said, but to congratulate the fire chief and their fire department with their new truck. They've been working for it for years, and I've been on the councils that have tried to support them. And I thank Councillor Neil for all his work in it as well. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan.
Your Worship and Council, I would just like to say regarding the fire truck that I'm very proud to be part of this council that works so diligently, especially Councillor Neil for doing such a superior job, and our fire chief for the excellent follow-up. I think that council, staff, fire chief all deserve a pat on the back, because we put public safety first, and this is our sole intent. And I wish to say thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Council, for your time this evening. I'm going to note that we are going to go into closed session at 8:52 p.m. as per Local Governance Act 68(1)D, which is the proposed or pending acquisition and disposition of land, and as well, let me see if I can get it up here, for 68J, which is a labor and employment matter. So I'll be looking for a mover to go into closed. Got Councillor Heenan, a seconder, Councillor Gumashall. All in favor of going to close, please raise your hand. As everybody, we're in closed session. We'll give Mr. Knopper a minute just to make the transition. Is that everything? Yeah, we're out of closed. Motion to come out of closed session. Councillor Neil, seconded by Councillor Heenan. Any discussion on coming out of closed? All those in favor of coming out of closed, please signify by saying aye. Okay, I'll be looking for a mover for a motion to remove Miss Jenny Cook as a member of the Planning Advisory Committee for the Town of St. Andrews, effective immediately. Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Hurdle. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous, so that has been carried. We're looking for a motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Akaji, as always, seconded by Councillor Gumashall. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, Council.